Today's case is the Hang Lee's case that happened back in 1993 in St. Paul, Minnesota. Let's get into it. Hang was 17 years old in 1993. She was born October 9, 1975. When Hang was a child, her family lived in a refugee camp as they were from Laos. Eventually, the Lee family settled in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hang's family are Hmong, so Hang spoke both Hmong and English. In 1993, Hang is a senior at Highland Park High School and has dreams of becoming an author to chronicle the Hmong experience in America. Hang planned to attend the University of Minnesota that fall and had been saving money for her tuition. Hang loves heavy metal. When you think of an 80s hair band, that was absolutely the look that Hang rocked. She had dyed her bangs red and teased out her hair. When she listened to heavy metal and smoked cigarettes, this earned her a reputation of a quote-unquote bad kid in her community. But Hang was anything but. She was a loyal and true friend who trusted people quickly. She had started working at the age of 13 at the Wong Cafe in order to help her family with the bills and save for college. She was a bookworm who loved romance novels. She was a dependable and good kid. Now let's go into what happened. On Tuesday, January 12, 1993, Hang gets a call from her friend Kia Lee. No relation. Kia is known by Nikki. Nikki had called Hang to see if she was interested in working for her boss, Mark Stephen Wallace. He ran a paint and decorating business near Iroquois Avenue and Stillwater Avenue in St. Paul. Nikki had worked as a receptionist for him for about a month, and she thought it was strange he was looking to hire someone else since he never seemed to have any customers. She told police that the only people that seemed to come into the business were young teenage boys. Wallace and the boys would often disappear behind a locked door in his office where Nikki had no idea what they were doing. Hang was looking for another job at this time to help save for college and continue to help her family out. She was one of 13 siblings, and money was tight. Her current job only paid $7 an hour, so she was very interested in finding another one. Hang called her current boss, Eileen, at the Wong Cafe to tell her that she had a job interview and she wouldn't be coming in that night since she was scheduled to work. Hang got ready to leave between 6 and 7 p.m. that evening. It was a snowy day, but true to her metal rock look, Hang was only wearing a black t-shirt that said Skid Row on the back, a light black leather jacket, black pants, and tennis shoes, and she had on lots of jewelry, including 2 silver bracelets. She told her brother Kua that she was leaving and asked him to lock the door behind her. She did not have a key to the house. This was something that they did often. Hang would leave for the night, and when she needed to get let back into the house, she would knock and Kua would let her back in. Before she left, she told Kua, quote, "If I don't come back, please come looking for me. I don't trust Nikki." So let's talk a little bit about Mark Stephen Wallace. He is the prime suspect in this case. In 1993, Mark Stephen Wallace is 30 years old, and he had recently been released from prison after serving time on a rape charge. In 1988, he was convicted of sexually assaulting a woman, but was linked to 4 other attacks. This was actually his second rape conviction. The first one happened in 1984, but we're just going to talk about the 1987 attacks here. In 1987, a series of sexual assaults were happening. All of the women had had their legs tied, so that way they were forced open. All of them were gagged, and all of them had their eyes and mouth taped shut. Some were covered with blankets during the attacks. He was caught because he had called a woman offering her a job at a radio station. The woman set up a time to meet with Wallace, but she became suspicious. Some documents with her personal information had been stolen out of one of her teacher's cars recently. The woman called police, who sent an undercover police officer to meet with Wallace. Police arrested him, and he admitted to investigators that he had planned to tie the woman up with shoestrings that he had in his pocket. He also admitted to police that he was the person who stole the documents out of the car and was calling women using the numbers he found with the hopes of assaulting them. He was sent to jail for 3 years, but was released early in June of 1991. That's when he started his painting and interior decorating business. Nikki, Hang's friend, worked for Wallace from December of 1992 to March of 1993, so just 4 months. She said during this time she never saw any other customers or employees, just the teenage boys. Wallace also talked to Nikki about becoming a model and took pictures of her promising to introduce her to someone who could give her a job. This never happened, and Nikki has no idea what happened to the pictures. She also said that one morning she came into work around 9 a.m. and Wallace gave her a drink, telling her it would help her from becoming nauseated by the paint fumes. She drank it and said she started to feel numb and lost feeling in her hands. Wallace told her it was normal and to keep drinking. He even gives her a second glass. Nikki gets sick and throws up. She eventually is overwhelmed by sleepiness and lays down on the ground to sleep. She doesn't wake up until 7 hours later at 4 p.m. that day, and she's wrapped in a blanket when she wakes up. So let's get back on track with the disappearance of Hang Lee. There's no clear reports on who exactly Hang left with that night. I believe that Wallace and Nikki picked her up. Wallace started that night by driving a white pickup truck, but at some point, Nikki says that he switches into a 1988 Chevrolet Cavalier that is either tan or silver. It's unclear when or why he switches cars. Wallace drove around with Nikki in the front seat and Hang in the back seat. He talked about taking the girls to a casino when Nikki reminded him that they had school the next day. Wallace then drops the girls off. He lived closer to Hang, so he dropped Nikki off first. When she got to her home, she saw Wallace pull away, and Hang was climbing out of the back seat and into the front seat. Nikki believed that Wallace was going to drop Hang off at her home. Kua, Hang's brother, wakes up around 1 a.m. that night and realizes that he hadn't woken up for his sister to be let in. He hops up, thinking he might have slept through her knocking, and looks outside. It was snowing that night, and Kua thought that if Hang had been home, she would have left footprints in the snow, but there weren't any. Kua says, quote, "The snow was coming down pretty hard, and I didn't see footprints from the parking lot. I got up to see if I missed her, or if she was going to be on her way. I did have a bad feeling that kind of crawled up my neck, but of course I was still a kid, and I didn't know what to do." End quote. So the next day, this is Wednesday, January 13th, Kua wakes up and there's still no sign of Hang. He decides to head straight to the source and track down Nikki, like his sister had said before she left. Kua went to Como High School, where Nikki went, and found her in the cafeteria eating breakfast. Kua says, quote, "Soon as I show, I say, 'Hey, where's my sister?' Just in a calm, nice way, you know? And of course she gets all mean about it. 'I don't know where your sister is. I don't know what you're talking about.'" End quote. A few days later, Hang's parents report her missing to police. Police do not take her disappearance seriously. They write Hang off as a runaway, since this is something that she had done in the past. To further fuel that theory, police did talk to Nikki, and she told them that she saw Hang leave with some unknown young men. Hang's family do not believe that she ran away. She didn't take any of her other clothing with her. She left her purse, and she never picked up her $100 paycheck from work. Hang's parents are at a loss for what to do. Since they don't speak English, they have to rely on their teenage children to translate for them. They don't have any contacts with the media to get Hang's story the press coverage that it desperately needs. In June of that year, so 6 months since Hang disappeared, Hang's family start to hang flyers up around town. Police do start to find it strange that Hang has not returned home or contacted her family. Police go back to talk to Nikki about what happened that night. This time, Nikki has a different story for them. She tells police that she dropped Nikki off to Hang with her white friends. After more questions, Nikki says that Wallace was the last person that she saw with Hang. When asked why she lied about it, she told police she thought that Hang really had run away and didn't want to get her in trouble, and that Wallace had warned her not to tell anyone about his business. Once police learn of Mark Stephen Wallace's possible involvement, they start looking into the case seriously, but they're 6 months behind now. Police conduct a search of Wallace's home, office, car, and pickup truck. It's reported that they did luminal tests, but nothing was found. Shortly after this, Wallace lawyers up and refuses to talk to police or answer their questions. Wallace was talking about the case with his friends, however. Wallace had told a friend, who later told police, that he had dropped Hang off at a gas station near her job at the Wong Cafe. Police talked with Hang's friends, and nobody said that they had seen her that night. In July of 1993, so the next month, police tell Hang's parents what they know and what they know about Wallace, but the investigation has stalled. Both Wallace and Nikki were refusing to cooperate with police, and they didn't have any evidence that a crime had been committed. Those that knew Hang knew that she hadn't run away. Her boss, Eileen, at the Wong Cafe says, quote, "We knew she didn't run away. She never went any place without that purse. That's where she kept a lead ball and a knife for protection. She always wanted to act real tough, but she wasn't. She was really too sweet for her own good," unquote. And then the case appears to go really cold for a while. The next update that I could find comes 16 years later in 2009. The home that Wallace had grown up in and later inherited from his mother went into foreclosure. A neighbor had called police and told them that in 2004, when Wallace first inherited the home, he built a detached garage super quickly on the property. The neighbor said he had never seen a garage get built so quickly. When the home was put into foreclosure, the new owners who acquired the home gave police permission to search the property. Near the detached garage that Wallace had built, 2 out of 3 cadaver dogs hid on the garage in the same spot. Encouraged by this, police get a search warrant to drill holes into the garage of the floor to give dogs better access to the soil underneath. When the dogs returned, none of them hit or were interested in the garage. Police wanted to tear up their garage and the foundation, but without more evidence, they couldn't get the search warrant, and the new owners didn't want their garage ripped up. In 2016, so this is 23 years now that Hang has been missing, Mark Stephen Wallace is arrested and charged with kidnapping, stalking, and possession of meth. He was caught in a hotel room with a 20-year-old friend of his daughter's. When police found them, they said the woman was covered in bruises and malnourished. She told police that she was being held against her will, and Wallace kept threatening her to do what he did to a woman in St. Paul. He said she entered by business and never came out. Wallace is charged with this case and given a 3-year sentence. In April of 2017, Hang has been missing now for 24 years. Her family decides to hold a spirit release for her. A spirit release ceremony is a Hmong custom that allows for the person's soul to be reincarnated. Hang's niece Lillian wrote on her Facebook, quote, "As much as it breaks our hearts that we can't find closure and answers we seek, we, as a family, have decided to finally release her spirit on April 7th and 8th, 2017. The spiritual release acknowledges that Hang may no longer be alive in this world, but she will live in our hearts forever. We, as her family, would like to honor her by releasing her spirit to the other world. This is the first memorial held for Hang. Her family do believe that if she was alive, she would have reached out to them by now if she was able to." Hang's mother, Chang Vang, forgives whoever hurt her daughter, but wants to know where Hang is so that she can bring her home and have a proper burial. The family invite the public to her spirit release, hoping to help raise awareness for the case. Her mother, Chang, says, quote, "Those who love her, please come. Also, please come and see that this is not something that's just in a story. It is real, too." Around 2019, Mark Stephen Wallace was getting ready to be released from prison from the kidnapping case. Prosecutors filed a petition for him to be civically committed at the Minnesota Sex Offender Program in Moose Lake. Just as a quick summary, because I didn't know what this was, people are detained here who no longer have an active prison sentence, but who the government believes pose too much of a danger to the public and to reoffend. In theory, people who are sent here are given therapy, and the state attempts to rehabilitate them and release them back to the public. To date, only 16 people have ever been released from this program, and there are several complaints that the people here are not being given treatment despite asking for it, and that the state has no real plans to rehabilitate. During the argument phase for Wallace to be committed, prosecutors laid out everything that they knew about Hang Lee. This is the closest that the law has ever gotten to putting Wallace on trial for her murder. The judge agreed with prosecutors, and Mark Stephen Wallace is still in the Minnesota sex offender program. The last update that I could find for this case comes from 2021, so this is 28 years now that Hang has been missing. The police returned to the former home of Wallace, the one with a detached garage. This time, they returned to do some digging and to penetrate the ground with 3D imaging. Police say that they did not find Hang's body or sufficient evidence to make an arrest. As of today, Hang Lee is still missing. It's been 31 years, and her disappearance went cold. That concludes today's case. Thank you for all the support, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.